Hello everyone. In this documentary, we will be discussing a controversial topic that has existed for years now. This is progressive taxing. Do you know what progressive taxing is? If you do, that's good. If you don't, let me define it for you. A progressive tax is one that takes a larger percentage from the income of high income earners than it does from low income earners. So the tax rate increases as the amount being taxed increases. Progressive taxing first came in the early days of the Roman Republic, where the tax rate was implemented based on owned wealth and property. But the first modern income tax was imposed by Prime Minister William Pitt in 1798 from Britain to collect money to buy weapons for the French Revolutionary War. The federal income tax in the United States is considered a progressive tax system. The American federal income tax is considered a progressive tax. Here is the tax bracket table for 2010 in the United States. As you can see, if you earn from $0 to $8,350, you will get taxed 10% of that amount. If you earn from $8,351 to $33,950, you will get taxed 15%. At the end, if you earn more than $372,951, you will get taxed 35%. Yet, this table can be a little confusing without further explanation, because if you earn, let's say for example, $100,000, which will fall in this bracket, you will not get taxed 28% of those full 100,000. If you can see here, the way it works is you get taxed 10% of the first $8,350 you earn, as you can see here, and then 15% of the next $25,600, then 25% from the $48,300, then 28% for the last $17,000 you earn. So in totally you owe $21,720, which is less than if you will get taxed the 28% for those whole $100,000.
You can see the idea that people who can pay more should pay more has existed for centuries. Progressive taxing is fair for the eyes of the country, and more than being fair, progressive taxing definitely has other positive aspects. For example, progressive taxing, if done efficiently, can increase government revenue. It also impedes wealth from being concentrated in the hands of a few people, enhancing opportunity for its lower and middle class citizens. However, progressive tax has negative aspects as well.
Progressive taxation has its critics. Opponents of progressive taxing argue that it violates the basic principle that all people are created equal under the law, since it treats the wealthy and the poor differently. It is also unfair to the rich because, with the progressive tax system, they supply 60% of the tax base of a country and they do not receive other benefits. Also, progressive taxes create a negative incentive to win more. People will not want to earn more money if they're going to be punished for it, since they can get taxed up to 35% of their income. Finally, progressive taxing motivates the wealthy to find loopholes, shelter income, pay politicians for tax breaks, and other types of tax avoidances.
A progressive taxation system is one in which the tax rate increases when the amount being taxed increases. Basically, the federal income tax here in the US is considered a progressive tax system. Do you think this tax method is fair and efficient for society?
It has, like most things, both good and bad features. That is to say, in some extent, it's fair in the sense that those who earn more pay more, and that's sort of always been a philosophy of the United States. Those who can do. On the other hand, though, because the tax rates at the upper end are fairly high in the 30% area, it also encourages a lot of tax avoidance behavior and legal tax avoidance behavior. So a number of things have been written into the tax code to allow people in upper tax brackets to avoid a lot of taxes and therefore shift the tax burden back to the poor. So there's both sides to that story of those tax avoidance things that are legally written into the tax code. So, for example, let's say a 20% flat rate tax with no exemptions, deductions, or exclusions. It was calculated that would actually increase the tax revenue to the government, but decrease the average tax bill to the consumer.
Okay, because that's one of the primary reasons why we do it, right? Because they supposedly progressive tax increase government revenue, right?
Well, yeah, it collects more money. In principle, it collects more money from the higher wage earners. It is a marginal tax system, so that it increases in blocks. The first 15,000 is taxed at this amount, the next X thousand is taxed at a higher amount, and the next is taxed at a higher amount still. So yes, sure, the idea is to collect increasing revenue to the government, along with the basic philosophy, like I said, that the wealthy pay more.
Yes. And there's this idea of opponents, the people who oppose progressive taxing, that it violates the basic principle of all people are equal under the law, because it treats the wealthy and the poor differently.
Well, in part, that's again, if we just go to pure theory and not anything that's happened over the last 200 years in terms of that was the idea. The rich should pay more, and the rich should help the poor.
So
that was the basic philosophy. So it was designed to treat people differently. And even a flat rate tax would in essence treat people differently depending on how you think about it. Even if it was a 20% on everyone, a very wealthy person is going to be paying a lot more money. It's fair in the sense that it's 20% to everyone. But, a very poor person, that 20% might, still be a big amount. It might be the difference between eating every day of the week. A very, very wealthy person, 20%, let's say millions of dollars, but they're probably going to eat every day. So, the idea that the people are treated unequally is inherent in the tax code. There is a zero bracket amount. There's an amount below which you don't pay any tax. You only earn this amount. You don't pay any tax at all, that sort of thing. So it's inherent in the tax system to treat people differently.
And another question, can you explain how progressive taxing benefits the middle class? Because there's some people that actually say it has a negative effect on the middle class.
Well, you have to think about it in two ways. You have to think about it in, just in theory, does it benefit the middle class? It does, in the sense that, in principle, the wealthy pay more. Now, the idea that because so many tax avoidance features have been written into the tax code over the years, in some sense, and as you mentioned, it appears that the more wealthy are able to take advantage of more of those. Certainly, that's true in principle. Then the greater burden tends to fall on the middle class, less able to take advantage of those breaks. But some of them are, the biggest one of all is the mortgage home deduction. That's available to the most taxpayers. Well, if you think about it for a minute, even the middle class then are greatly benefited. They can take advantage of that. They can probably buy a home and have their mortgage interest deducted against the income tax, which means the poor are then subsidizing the middle class to home buying. So it's a trade-off. It's a trade-off in both directions. So it kind of becomes something of an empirical question about is the middle class benefited or is the middle class harmed? In some sense, both.
And the last question will be, several European countries have successfully imposed a flat tax. Do you think we should do that here in the United States? Will it be a good thing?
I think if you just look at it from a, say, an economic freedom sense, and less incentives to alter my behavior, I would say yes, a flat tax is probably a good idea. Again, if you could implement, eliminating all the tax avoidance things that have been written in the code, so no exemptions, no deductions, no exclusions. Maybe we started at, pick some threshold amount, that if you earn less than, pick an amount, $10,000, you don't pay anything, but it starts at $10,000 and up, you pay a percentage. And eliminate all the exemption. If we could reduce the 1040 form to a note card, how much did you earn? Send in 20% of that. Might work. Get it passed through the Congress? I don't think so, but it probably would work out.
And in the sense of efficiency for society, I mean economic welfare.
It would certainly be more efficient in that there's just got to be significant dead weight loss involved. I think in principle, I like the idea. Simplify. It's hard to tell for sure, but the studies I've looked at say would actually increase revenue to the government to eliminate all the deductions, and a 20% amount would lessen the tax burden to most individuals, not all, but most, and it would decrease the inefficiency because there wouldn't be this tax avoidance behavior. We wouldn't be spending money on people filling out taxes. But on the other hand, think of all the the difficulty of doing that. Think of all the H&R Block would go out of business.
Yes.
And it's going to be hard to do.
I just did my taxes all the way.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to do. But that's inefficient. And in other words, that's a waste of resources. That's a non-productive use of resources to have someone fill out your tax form, and yet it's required. I have a CPA fill out mine, and I'm not I'm not a very wealthy person, but enough goes on in my life that I have to have a skilled tax preparer to do it properly. So, one, so I can not pay as little as possible, and two, so I don't get in trouble.
Yes.
Don't make a mistake.
Yes.
So anyway, I think that's probably the case. I think it probably would be a good idea, but practically, I don't see how it could be passed in this country.
Yeah.
Too much infrastructure has built up over the years towards that.
Yeah. It's a good idea in theory, but
It's a good idea in theory. I don't see how we pull it off in real life.